Builder, back at it. Dan Braun here today with Braun Body Training, and not just one hat, wears multiple hats. We're going to get into the fact that he's a Dr. PT, owner of Braun Performance and Rehab, works with ISOFIT, has some performance partnerships, and then also runs his own podcast where, like me and Lucas, we want to find more subject matter experts, get better with our weekly continuing education, bringing on athletes and coaches, learning about what makes them tick and what builds them. So Dan does the same thing that I'm doing in that regard and has been doing it a bit longer than I have. I'm only 100 episodes in and he's way, way past that, but wears a lot of hats, likes to be fit, and grew up playing a lot of different sports, still active today. So we're lucky to have Dan. We're gonna get into a lot of things, but hey, man, Dan, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, Jim, I really appreciate you having me on, man. I love the work that you're doing.
Right away. How old are you, Dan?
28.
28. If you could play any sport right now that you want to play, what sport would it be? And then you have to be a professional at it. So what sport would you want to play professionally right now?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And just looking back at my past history in sport that way, played soccer, baseball, football, all that in high school. Also grew up skiing, water skiing, wakeboarding, all that sort of thing. And I think if I had to narrow it down to one or two of those, I think one, being a kicker for a pro football team would be that. To me, that's like the best life there could be, right? Like you're making pretty good salary, pretty good money that way. You get to be on the football team, but maybe lower injury risk than some of the
Right?
other positions that might exist that way. So I
Sure.
like to think that the kickers definitely have a good gig. But by the same token, I also think it'd be really awesome to ski professionally as well. I have a ton of respect for the pro ski racing world that way. And, some of those athletes, Bodie Miller, Michaela Schifrin, the stuff they're doing in the space is just absolutely incredible.
Given your body type and what you can do, what sport do you think you would be best at?
Considering I've been skiing since I was like 15 months old, I like to say skiing is going to be the thing. And it's funny because if you look at me playing some of these other sports, like I have the physical strength and the power for it, but I'm a little bit of a motor moron, self-proclaimed. So the coordination piece isn't always there, but for some reason on skis, it registers. It happens naturally. So I credit that to my dad for putting me on skis at such a young age, like around the time I was literally just starting to walk. So,
Bodie Miller or Lindsey Vaughn?
that's a great question. I think they're both absolute legends in the space that way. And they're both some of the best athletes there are. Just from a personality standpoint, I think I vibe a little bit more with Bodie Miller. Like if you look at his history as a ski racer, I think he's got a little bit of a rebel attitude that way, and the stuff that he's done. And he's someone that really just knows no limits, and he's just going to continue to push it as hard as he can, as long as he can. And I have a lot of respect for that, and I like to think that I embody a similar kind of a vibe with the work that I do that way.
Bodie's a big partier at some points in his life too.
Yeah, no,
Right.
he's a absolute legend in the space, and it's one of those things that again, just the names in the ski space that way. Whether you look at Lindsey Vonn, Michaela Schifrin, Bodie Miller, any of the other incredible athletes, like they're doing such incredible things that way, and I have so much respect for all the athletes on the national team, and I think them being able to represent their country and travel internationally and all is just unbelievable.
Would you rather win a Super Bowl as the kicker for your favorite football team, or would you rather win the downhill Olympic medal?
I think an Olympic medal. I think that feeling, and I can't speak to this personally from experience, but I would
Sure.
imagine the feeling that you get of winning a medal for your country, like just something bigger than yourself at that point. I think there's something special about that.
What's your walkout song going to be then?
So I guess it's going to depend on my mood. You know what I mean? Like I think if I want to give a little blast to the past, like I grew up. My dad always played the '70s, '80s, '90s music when I was a kid. So a little, hat nod to like some Bon Jovi or something like that. But lately I've been listening to a lot of Ryan Jesse music, so I'd probably throw one of his songs on. It's kind of like a little bit of a mix between country and metal, so I'd probably throw like Outrunning or something like that on, one of his better songs, I think.
So now you get to go out and it's all your buddies and your family, and you get to have, your essentially your best meal, like as if you're on death row, but it's for a good cause. You just won a medal. What's going to be, on the menu for Dan and the party afterwards, the celebration? What's everybody going to be eating at the big party?
Ever since I moved down here to North Carolina, I'd say at least once a week, most weeks 2 to 3 times a week, I'm getting brisket from someplace really good. So I'd
Nice.
probably look for some real good barbecue someplace. Get me some good brisket. Obviously, you got to pair that with some good sides. So can we get some hush puppies, some mac and cheese, all the fixings with that? But I think it's really hard to beat well done barbecue that way. So I'd probably load up on all that barbecue, and then afterwards, you obviously got to hit a little dessert. And I'm a big fan of something like a warm brownie or a warm chocolate chip cookie, but neither of them can be fully baked. And you throw that in with a little vanilla ice cream, and the ice cream just kind of melts on top like it's a 10 out of 10. So I'd probably full send and do a little something like that.
Fun, fun. So everyone in their career, they think they have an idea where they're going to go, and it's kind of funny because it usually doesn't always go that way. Like I did 15 years in finance, investments, J.P. Morgan, hedge fund, a whole deal, and now I'm 13 years in the health and wellness space. And I'm looking at your resume, and I see, doctor of physical therapy. So that's a number of years of schooling. Also have a relationship with ISOFIT. You have your podcast. There's different components to what Dan Braun does professionally. So I was wondering, how did we put all that together? Was it an idea or a strategy back in undergrad, or as you were getting through grad, undergrad, and then work on your doctorate, you're thinking, I want to add these pieces, or did you add them incrementally? Like just kind of came along. How did you go from A to B?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you that it was all planned out and strategized, but that's not the case whatsoever. I was going through undergrad, exercise science, absolutely loved everything that I was doing at that time. And I knew I was going to be going to grad school for my doctorate of physical therapy. I was already accepted into the program. And I think I had a general idea as to what a PT did, but I didn't know the full spectrum. And there was a time, even in grad school, I was questioning it a little bit. I'm like, man, am I on the right path? Is this for me? Is this what I want? And that was during my first year of grad school, where it's a lot of different, general type courses that are really important to know, like pathophysiology, biomechanics, but I didn't see as many direct correlations to what I wanted to do with athletes. And then in my second year of grad school, I felt like everything was very heavy on the orthopedic side and musculoskeletal side. And I saw that path forward. We were learning some cool stuff like spinal manipulation. And I was like, yeah, this is the right place for me to be. And the plan initially was to graduate and find a position working with athletes just to gain experience, put the reps in, and so on that way. During my time in grad school, COVID happened, and I found myself with a lot of newfound free time. Obviously, still have to take exams, still have to do lectures and study and prep, but there was a lot of newfound time because all of that stuff was asynchronous from home. And I was really concerned that during that time I was going to get soft, for lack of a better way to put it, right? It's easy when you aren't in that kind of environment where everyone else is pushing themselves and studying and putting in the hours when you're not surrounded by them. It's very easy to just kind of go off the beaten path, if you will. And so I started the podcast then because I always loved podcasts. I was a big fan of the Ben Greenfield podcast, listened to it a ton in school. And I was like, I might as well start my own. And literally first episode, had my phone held up like this and just talked away for like 45, 50 minutes. It was probably terrible. I don't know why anyone listened, but they did. And they kept coming back. And eventually I actually learned things like audio editing and, what microphone to get and all that kind of stuff. But it was really just something I started on a whim and just refused to quit. And all the other things that you mentioned, ISOFIT, Vault, all these other different companies and brands that way, they all kind of came about just from me refusing to say no, and also just being too stubborn to quit the things that I started. I really never appreciated this concept of quitting what you start. I've only done it on one occasion that way, and it was one of those things that it's like, I don't want to have to do that again. If I start something, like if I start a podcast, I don't want to stop doing it. I just want to keep going and ride that train as far as it goes. And along the way, opportunities have popped up, and I'm just open to exploring, connecting, collaborating all the time. And I like I said, I don't really like to say no. So I want to find a way to kind of make it work in everyone's best interest. So that's kind of allowed me to blend a bit of a clinical practice with athletes, with some work with brands, with a podcast, and so on that way.
It's interesting, and I love how there's a number of things that I want to comment on. One, you're worried about getting soft because you weren't surrounded by people all pushing, right? And when you talk to athletes, if there's someone who's a receiver, they'll say, "Hey, I'm really lucky that I go against this defensive back," or "I'm an offensive lineman. I'm really lucky I go against this defensive lineman," or "I'm playing basketball," or maybe you're a batter in baseball and we just saw the World Series. Well, I'm really lucky that our pitchers are so great. I have to face them, right? Because it keeps them pushing, right? They're on the edge. So you recognize that the value of teammates, and that's one of our 6 components here, teammates, that you want to see your future. Show me the people you hang out with, right? Number two, there was a bit of adversity with COVID, and people are sitting around. Some people are working hard at home. Some people are working hard at just drinking. Some people are baby making, And you thought, well, maybe I could pivot a little bit and expand a branch of Dan Braun, of my business and who I am. And similarly, that's when, my gym and I, we had a nutrition, and we're not just training folks. So I totally empathize with that, hey, we have a moment here to take a breath and take a look around. Maybe I want to add a piece. So that's awesome that you're not, driven people do that, right? Instead of just waiting for life to happen to or for them, you're out there making it happen. So I love that piece. And I got to believe that when you talk to folks, whether I looked on your history, there's doctors, there's athletes, there's coaches, there's MDs, there's psychologists, there's panels of people. It's got to be, I don't know if you seem like me in that every week when I record, I just get a great time meeting new folks and learning stuff. And so I can get better just by hanging out, listening to someone else talk. I don't have to read a book this time or listen to someone else, but you just kind of share and look at someone else's perspective. And I just find that just a huge gift from God. So I really like the approach in that. See, I'm at 50 and you're not even at 30 yet. So man, you got a lot of years and a lot of potential to keep building that impact. So man, good for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. And I mean, just to kind of build on those 2 points that you mentioned there. First off, in relation to COVID and everything we got started during that time and everything you got started during that time, Jocko has a really good line that I can't remember word for word off the top of my head, so I'm going to paraphrase it. But essentially, he's talking about this situation, Jocko Willink, where they were kind of just on hold, right? Him and his team are in a building and everyone's just on hold waiting for an order, and no one gave an order. So Jocko steps back from the situation, assesses things for a second, and then gives an order, even though maybe it wasn't his duty or role or responsibility to give the order. He stepped up and did it anyways. But he talks a lot about that moment where he just stepped back from the situation, literally one physical step back. And I've been able to do that a number of times since COVID. That's when I first came up with this concept, or heard this concept, I should say. And I think there's something valuable about being able to literally just step back from whatever your current situation is and look at everything that's in front of you and being able to decide where to go, what actions to make because of that. A lot of the times we stay engaged. And I think as we stay engaged, things like emotional influences and other things start to infiltrate our decision making. And sometimes the best way to make leaps and bounds forward is to step back and being able to just be honest and open with yourself about what the situation is presenting and what the best course of action is moving forward from there, and just simplifying it to this level of ones and zeros, right? It's yes or no. Is this the right thing to do? Yes or no. The more simple you can make it, the better off you're going to be. And I think to your point on the value of conversations, to me, I think there's value in every conversation and every connection. I don't really care what someone's title is. I don't care if they've been in this space 1 year or, 20, 30 years. I want to connect with them, and I want to view that as a learning opportunity and experience. Best example I can give of that recently, a couple months ago, we did a roundtable podcast with some lacrosse strength coaches, and I had someone send me a text afterwards, and they're like, hey, enjoyed it, loved it, really learned a lot. But one of the guys on there said he was just wrapping up his first year. I was just curious, why did you have him on if he's only worked in the sport for a year? And I go, I want to know the insights of the people that have been in the space for 10 plus years. And I want to know the insights of the new generation as well, because they might be looking at things through a different lens or a different perspective that none of us have ever thought to go before. And that's how new ideas get generated. And that's how we continue to build and evolve moving forward. But if you're not willing to have the conversation, none of that ever happens. So I think there's so much value in just getting good people together and talking about selected topics. I've not had, knock on wood, I haven't had anything negative come from it so far.
Well, if you need more volunteers, I'm happy to help out in any way, make an impact. So keep me in mind. And I agree, you get a good discussion. My wife and my wife's comments on this consistently, that she's saddened by her perception of the world now, and that you'll hear a lot of Democrat, Republican rhetoric, and she'll say, "Can't we just talk and have a conversation? Why does it have to be, hey, I think this, and if you don't, I'm going to attack you?" And it just gets violent right from there, because the Socratic method of asking questions after questions and finding different ideas works when people are going to be open, and when they're closed, they're not. So I love the idea of having roundtables. And I agree with 100% with what you said about taking a step back. And so one of my main shticks as like the coach, or what I'm about is, all right, this is a good practice. Do I want to implement it? So then what is my process? So I can sit there and say, hey man, it's good to take a step back every once in a while, right? So then Jim comes in, and I'll say, all right, so how often? For us, we like to do it every 90 days, every 13 weeks, whether it's 1 day locked in a cabin or 2 days. And all right, here's where things are going. Because like you and me and everyone else, you get into a life of momentum where I'm going in a certain direction, and you're like, well, shoot, man, 5 years down the road, how did I get 30 pounds heavier? How come I haven't balanced my checkbook? How come I have a weak relationship with one of my kids? Because you've been doing the same thing without taking a step back and evaluating, can things be a little bit better or a little bit different. And I think once you have an idea that, hey, this is going to be important to do, like taking a step back and looking around and evaluating, simply then ask, what's my process going to be? And then work with that for 1 to 2 years, and then just evaluate the process. Like, here's my process, I'm stepping back. How can I make that process better, right? So once you have these ideas, which I love how you put that in there systematically, like a deload week if you're lifting, right? Take a look around. Or when people really take a step back, it's usually because they have to. I got injured. My spouse left me. I got fired. I didn't get promoted. I got problems with faith. Well, now I have to take a look because now I'm forced to. I keep getting speeding tickets. That was me in college, right? So without being forced to, if you can systemize it yourself, then bang, you can just keep making more and more progressions, and it's a lot easier.
Absolutely. Yeah. And to pull a line from Jocko once again, he has a line about how discipline equals freedom. And it's the concept of being disciplined enough to stay to those routines, to stay the course of some of those things that are pretty easy to deviate from, right? it's very easy to continue to train and push on. It's not easy to step back and slow down sometimes, right? What's the hardest thing for a car to do? Speed up and slow down. It's real easy to sit there and stay on cruise control and keep going. But
Sure.
sometimes you hitting the brakes and slowing down a little bit is the best thing that you can possibly do. Whether you're a coach, clinician, an athlete, just slow down and assess yourself. And my friend Rob Wilson has a book that I always like to promote that way, the Check Engine Light. And every time I read it or every time I dig back into it, I'm just reminded by how freaking good it is and how we've lost our concept of what it means to be human, right? No human comes with an owner's manual. They don't tell you what anything means, right? Like if you get a headache, do you know why you got a headache that day? Or do you just know, hey, my head really freaking hurts? So it's nice to have this almost like Bible of understanding what those bodies' check engine lights and warning signs are and what to possibly do about them. And that's something that I think everyone needs to have some sort of practice to develop. And I don't really care what that practice is, whether that's, like you said, you disappear every 90 days for a single day, you go to a cabin in the woods and you reflect, you meditate, you pray, whatever it is that way, just have some kind of process. I'm more of a everyday, just a quiet period, right? Like, hey, can I put the phone away? Can I separate myself from the screens and all this external noise that just exists in the modern world and just be still and quiet with myself, right? Or a lot of the times in this area, athletic space is absolutely booming. And I have no issue going to a game and watching half a game or an entire game, just going and watching. And it's like, a lot of times people think that there needs to be some type of like, oh, you need to go with a group of people. You need 20 of your best friends to go and enjoy it, or you need to constantly be on your phone to get the most out of life. And it's like, no, I think there's so much value in the peace that comes with not needing any of those things. I know,
Sure.
my friend Pipper Anderson, and him and I joke at least 3 times a week about how one of these days we're both just going to pack up, buy a ranch in Wyoming and fall off the face of the earth. And it's like, for me, that's the new value of peace,
One of my members at the gym asked me the other day, "Hey Jim, if you weren't coaching, like the place burned down and you didn't feel like rebuilding, like what would you do?" And I said, I probably wouldn't do this for long, but maybe just a year. And they're like, "What?" I said, "I'd probably find some small farm and just muck the stalls. And I don't care if I'm shoveling shit or baling hay, just something where it's manual and quiet, and I can just be at peace and just calm down, not be at all stimulated. That would be it might be a good way to rest. When I talk or work with or collaborate with physical therapists, and I'm not saying one method is right or the other, but they seem to become in one of four categories. One, the physical therapist wants to they work with patients, and the whole approach is get them out of pain. Or two, they get them out of pain, but then also find the root cause and kind of address the root cause. And then some physical therapists want to get them out of pain, address the root cause, and then they have small gyms attached to their practice, and they'll train people one on one, or maybe small group like one on four, 4 athletes. And so some people work in just one of those three areas. Some people work in all three, so that'd be the fourth iteration. One does all three. Tell me about Dan Braun's approach and practice and how you work with people.
Yeah, so this might be a little different than what other people feel, think, whatever, but I think everything you just outlined has a time and a place. Ultimately, I think everything exists on some type of continuum or a spectrum that way, right? Like earlier, you throw out politics, and there's a left and a right, and it's everything exists somewhere along that spectrum. The same, in my opinion, is true in the physical therapy space, right? Like we take manual therapy. On one end of the spectrum, there's people saying it's a completely biomechanical construct. The other end is people saying it's an entirely neurophysiological construct. In reality, where it probably lies is somewhere in the middle. So I think for a lot of the patients that I work with, the best answer tends to be somewhere in the middle. Like you mentioned, some PTs are so focused on just controlling pain and reducing pain and being an alternative form to pain management than opioids. And it's like, you know what? There is a time and a place for that. And there's a need for that in the space. But not every single person that needs physical therapy needs that approach. So for me, I want to have that skill set of I need to be really good at reducing acute pain. In the athletic space, maybe there's times when athletes have conditions that biomechanically are not going to impact their performance. But from more of that neural side, it just really freaking hurts and they don't know why. And that pain is preventing them from doing what they want to do. So from that standpoint, yeah, if I can address the pain, then yeah, we're in a good spot. You mentioned the root cause, and this is a interesting term that I see thrown around a ton in modern times, especially in this online social media world. And where I think this term gets lost is a lot of times people will say, oh, it's the root cause. It's this one thing. And they go all in on this one thing. You know, the reason your ankle hurts is because, oh, it pronates too much. Or the reason your hip hurts is because you don't have internal rotation range of motion. And once you get that one thing that you're missing, it's going to be all better magically. And to me, I don't really think there's ever one root cause to all these different complex issues that we've gotten. You know, you mean to tell me that you are so confident in your assessment that you did in 20 to 30 minutes that you have figured out the root cause of why this athlete got injured? In reality, there's hundreds of different factors, right? Did you account for their sleep? Did you account for their nutrition? Did you account for their stress level? Did you account for their pre-injury baseline, whatever that functional status looked like? Did you account for all these different variables and factors, right? Like there's this rise in the sports science space now. And it's like, you know, from one single jump on a set of force plates, I can get 7 pages of numbers and data. It's like, did you account for every single one of those? Because if you didn't, you're not going to convince me that one single number on that sheet was the root cause of the whole downward spiral. So for me, I like the concept of the root cause, but I take it a little bit further, something that I call it a little bit more holistic, where it's like, hey, can we look at the entire athlete picture and talk with them as a person and not just isolate it into a few numbers on a sheet and not just isolate it into, oh, objectively, they have this gait deficit, this range of motion deficit, and this strength deficit. I think the more you look at the entire spectrum of the athlete, the better your assessment is going to be. So we've got our pain, we've got our pain plus root cause bucket. And then you obviously mentioned kind of the rise of the gym in the athlete space. And I don't think it's a secret that a lot of physical therapists are trying to adapt right now with some of the changes in the insurance model. And by the same token, I think a lot of PTs feel they've been too reactive and maybe not proactive enough, right? Instead of just waiting for something bad to happen, instead of waiting for a fire to start and then we're going to come and put the fire out, why not prevent the fire from starting in the first place? So I think they've started to shift towards this maybe preventative model that tends to be a little bit more self-funded or self-paid, but hey, you know, if we can prevent these different things from happening, maybe you don't need to come and see us in the clinic. And I think there's a great role for PTs in that space, but ultimately it's one of those things that I see a lot of people trying to do everything, right? They try to be the expert pain management person. They try to also be the best at diagnosing and get to the root cause of stuff. And then they try to be the gym, fitness, and strength and conditioning professional. And it gets exhausting trying to run 5, 10 different directions simultaneously. And for me, I think if you're going to do all those different things, you have to have a good team of people around you, people that you can lean on and trust to help you with those different endeavors, right? Like, hey, you know, if we want to be a PT facility and we want to have strength and conditioning, can I partner with some strength coaches who can help run that? And maybe we meet on a monthly basis and collectively discuss the programs. But like, if I'm a physical therapist, do I need to be the one running every single session that those athletes do and working with every athlete? Or, you know, do I trust some of these other people that are really, really good at their job to maybe do that along with me? And then we can kind of collaborate and work together. I think a lot of times people think that the table only has room for them to succeed and they have to do it all themselves, when in reality, there's plenty of room at the table for everyone to succeed and get to that higher ground. The more you pour into those around you, the more it's going to come back in term in some crazy way of how the universe works, and just continue to pour into your own cup so that it's just overflowing constantly.
If you follow Tim Grover at all, he was Jordan's strength coach back when he was with the Bulls, and then also with Kobe. He's written Relentless, and he's written Winning, and been through his books. And when he's asked about, what's the one thing, he almost gets offended, but not really. But it's like, hey, there is never one thing, right? So I'm glad that you answered it that way. From our approach, our philosophy with Athlete Builder, we'll get 6 big buckets, and each bucket has a ton of things, whether it's your mindset, knowledge of your sport, how you work with people, your training, nutrition, or recovery. So any one of those is a cross current with the athlete. And you mentioned, like, you come in to jump and get tested on your jumps. Yeah, maybe you were behind on sleep, or maybe you broke up with your girlfriend and you're behind. You got to take a test coming up, and there's a lot of stress. So then your nervous system is shot and you can't exert force very well. So there's so many cross currents. So to say there's always just one thing, there never is, right? I think ego gets in there when we're like, oh, you know what? I'm the strength coach, and the one thing is that they're not very strong, they're not very fast, and if I fix that, 'cause that's what I'm good at, then the athlete will be great, So if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with someone. African proverb, right? And so to your point, you could have a good practice, but it's not going to be great because it's not really sustainable in all those areas, because you can't wear all the hats all the time, right? And when you're trying to, early on, maybe you're starting your business, maybe you have to wear all the hats, but the quicker you can get out of that and partner with or collaborate with people that are great at their piece, then it's just so much easier. We got someone great blocking and someone great running, then it's really easy. But you have 2 great runners and no blockers, and then you're kind of in trouble, right? So that's huge. And when I look at athletes, just making it easy, by age. You got younger athletes, teenagers, high school. Then you got a more aggressive elite level athletes, college athletes, pros. And then you got just average Joes and average Janes. They're doing athletic things. They're skiing, maybe tearing ACL. They're doing CrossFit. They're doing powerlifting. They're doing whatever, but they have, athletic type injuries. In any one of those 3 areas, younger ones, the elite level athletes, and then just average Joes, do you see any significant trends with injuries? And then you come up with like different preventative things. So do you see any like trends that you're like, man, I see a lot of ACL tears, or I see a lot of people that hamstring tears, or whatever, shoulders in CrossFit, or backs in powerlifting? Do you see trends in those areas?
Yeah, anecdotally, I've definitely seen some unique trends. I anecdotally have seen that ACL injury timing, if you will, get earlier and earlier and earlier, right? Like there was 12-year-olds tearing ACLs. And I just think back to when I was in school, 12 years old, I was probably in 6th or 7th grade. And at that point, I mean, I don't remember anyone tearing their ACL. Like to me, that just seems younger than what we might initially expect. And by the same token, I also felt like I was seeing more of that kind of active adult population that you outlined present with multiple injuries, right? Like it wasn't just one surgery. It wasn't just one thing. It was like 3 or 4, right? There was a individual I worked with and shared quite a bit of online who was in his early 30s, and he was on his 3rd knee surgery in his early 30s. And there's another individual that I've gotten connected with through some friends of mine in the strongman space, who I believe is in his late 30s and has had both hips replaced. And it's just like, man, like I don't remember hearing and seeing a lot of stories like that before. So I feel like a lot of the different things that we've seen from an injury standpoint, regardless of what the injury type is, whether that's something that's going to need a joint replacement or something that's going to need reconstructive surgery, it seems like they're happening earlier and earlier. And again, that's just based on what I've seen with my experience. And it's one of those things that I just can't help but wonder what the long-term ramifications of those things are, right? So, if we look at the hip replacement, right? Like, okay, historically, a hip replacement is going to last somewhere between 20 and 30 years. So if I have a hip replacement at 40, does that mean I need another hip replacement at 65, 70? And
Probably.
if I live long enough, does that mean I need a third hip replacement now? Like, what's happening between hip replacement number one and hip replacement number three? Because once those things are cemented into the bone, they're not overly easy to get out. So I've certainly seen that kind of anecdotal trend of things shifting earlier, and I'm interested to see where that takes us long term. But by the same token, with the way this field advances, especially from an orthopedic medicine side of things, the way we address these issues now is going to be so far in the past. In just 5 years' time, the way knowledge and information is advancing, that I'm somewhat concerned about the future, but I'm less concerned just with the amount and speed and rate that all these advancements are taking place now.
I used to compete in the strongman world from like age 39 to 46. And, I work with a lot of CrossFitters that are just the average Joes, but some are pretty decent, compete, locally, student athletes. And what I tell people is that when you compete, you're not trying to be healthy, you're trying to win. You're trying to win at things, so you'll do things that are out of the normal range. At 6'3", I didn't need to be 320 pounds, but I was, because it helped me move more mass. Now that I don't do that anymore, I have no business being 320 pounds and left. Thank goodness I'm not. What I find, like when you have kids doing travel sports, they're being very competitive. The body's under a lot of duress. Or you have people that are now going from the couch to CrossFit or couch to powerlifting or couch to half marathon. They start doing one thing quite a bit. And then they don't realize that to do certain things, you have to do a bunch of other stuff too to enable that. So if I want to bench well, I don't necessarily just need to have a stronger chest and shoulders and triceps. I need a stronger back. I need to pull well to balance things out. And if I'm doing a lot of travel sports, I need to have enough strength so my skeleton denses up and my muscles will protect me and my ligaments and tendons. And if I'm going to be doing CrossFit 5, 6 days a week, or I'm going to be competing in powerlifting, or I'm doing triathlons, if you don't do the prehab and rehab work and you're doing it at 30, 40, and 50 years old. So it's if you want things, you want to do things, you want to pass your calculus exams, you got to do the other stuff that enables that to happen. And what happens, like me and anybody else, you don't do some of the little things, the prehab, you don't do the nutrition, you don't do the mobility and stability things, and next thing you know, well, shoot, I got hurt, right? And so I think that it's okay when people make a decision. I want to be really aggressive. Like if you're always skiing and you have weak legs, well, those knees are going to have some problems. Your hips are going to have some problems, right? You have a weak core and you can't hold a good posture, and your inflection and extension all the time in your spine, you're going to have some problems. So make decisions. That's fine on how you want to live your life. But then you also have to make the decisions to do the work to enable that. And when people don't, that's usually when they get hurt.
Yeah, my friend Nick Sedato summed this concept up perfectly in his book. The title is "Sweat More During Peace, Bleed Less During War," and it's as
Right.
simple as that. The more you prepare for the things that you're trying to embark on, the less likely you are to have things go wrong when that time comes.
What I then do is say, hey, I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to know everything. I just want to keep asking the questions. So if I come to you, Dan, I'm like, I'm a soccer player. I'm like, hey, I'm playing travel. I'm playing this much. What am I missing? What do I need to do differently in my preparation? You said, sweat more in practice, right? Well, physically, what should my training look like? What should my calorie intake look like? What's my should be what kind of strength training should that look like? So just keep at. I just want people, athletes and coaches, to take a minute, take a look around and say, hey, do I need to be doing anything differently at all? Whether it's that every 90 days or once at night, but hey, I'm going to make this plan for this year. What do I need to do differently? Just take a minute and have a look around. I think people just make a decision. All right, I'm going to play on this team and play travel or whatever, and they don't envision at all what comes with that. And maybe they couldn't because they're not able to see ahead. But find someone who does work in that space and say, hey man, I'm gonna start being a Highland Games thrower all the time. I'm gonna compete 6 months of the year. What's missing in my approach so I have some longevity? That's all I'm telling people to do. Ask some questions.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of become your own high performance director, or maybe the parents become the high performance director for their kids that are the athletes that way. And it's like you become the person who asks the questions, to your point, but also kind of surrounds yourself and builds out that team,
Team.
right? Who
That
are the
team,
people
right,
that
yeah.
you surround yourself with? Going back to your point before about the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people, right? Like, hey, we're going to surround ourselves with a good strength coach, good nutritionist, and we're going to surround ourselves with a mental performance coach. And that's going to be our initial team. And it's like, oh, injury happens, unfortunately, for reasons outside of our control. Like you've made the football example a few times. It's like, I can do things to help reduce your likelihood of injury, but if a 300-pound defensive lineman decides he's going to blow right through your knee, there's only so much I can do to help reduce the chances of that happening. It's bound to happen in the sport at least once anyways. So that happens. And then it's like, okay, now that team includes physical therapist. It includes AT at the school, whatever it is that way. It's like, that team evolves and changes over time, but ultimately the athlete or their parents or other key stakeholders have to act as their little high performance director to help them navigate those situations, those conversations, that team dynamic, and so on that way.
I love that piece about accumulating your team. You're only as strong as your weakest link, obviously. One thing that makes my job really easy when I have good guests like you and you complete your homework and get it to me. So, under the mindset questions, you wrote habits, which I love, right? And the joy acronym. Talk about those two components and mindset and how that applies.
Yeah. So for me, just starting off with the joy acronym, this is one that I wrote on a sticky note, and it's probably still on my bedroom door back home. I had a thing for sticky notes back in the day where I put these little reminders there, and I'd stick them on my door. So then every morning before I walk out, it was like that little reminder, right? And for me, joy was simple. If you want joy in life, it's the order that you put things. Jesus, others, yourself, right? Faith first, take care of everyone else. And, I think a lot of times people flip that and they feel like they have to take care of themselves first. But I kind of put myself last in a lot of things. And that has really paid off for me. It's like, look, I just want to find a way to help other people succeed. I want to find a way to make room at the table for more people to experience whatever their definition of success is, right? And I think the more you focus on having that foundation of faith first, then helping others, and then I'll take care of myself. Like the first two end up taking care of you as an individual somehow, some way. I can't explain how it works. It works like that. And then to your point as well on habits, I think at least for me, one of the things that I've really appreciated is my ability to just stay disciplined and do the things over and over and over again, right? Like every morning I get up and we're going to the gym. We're going to work out. It's not an optional thing. It's not if I feel like it. It doesn't matter what the weather is. Success doesn't care if it's cold, if it's early, if it's tired. Success only cares about if you showed up and checked the box. So for me, it's like, it's simple. The more simple I can make things, the better it is. So for me, I'm going to simplify it to the point where it's just something I do every day, right? Like, hey, I'm going to the gym every day, period. It's simple. I'm just doing it. I'm going to read every day. Again, it's simple. I'm just doing it. I'm going to learn something new every day, whether that's in the form of the podcast, in the form of a book, whatever. It's simple. I'm just going to do it. So I think having those habits aligned that allow you to just stack them over time, over and over and over again, like you're always getting at least 1% closer to where you want to be at the minimum, because you're moving towards that goal, right? The needle is constantly moving forward. Maybe it's faster one day compared to the other, but it's still always moving in that direction that you want to go in. So I think there's just so much value in staying the course and finding ways to continue to chip away over and over and over again at those bigger goals that you're after.
Beautiful. Love that. I was at the airport and I picked up one of uh, Tim. He's the 4 Hour Work Week guy. What's his name?
Yeah, Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss, right? And I picked up, and maybe it was Tools of Titans or one of those collaborative books. And I just opened to a random page, and the line was, "Goals are for losers." And I'm like, okay. And the second line was, "Systems are for winners." Meaning that if you have a goal but you don't have a system in place to achieve the goal, then you just have this little wish, right? So if you have a goal, it doesn't really matter until the system is in place, and the system is the habits that you utilize to build. So that really sums up exactly what you were preaching there, which was huge. If I look at the training questions, you have two completely opposite ends of the spectrum components. Body weight pull-ups, something that you love, right? And then you have strongman training, which is, having done it, my definition of strongman training is just pick up really dumb shit. And it's usually kind of cool, right? And I like doing it, but it's usually big and then heavy. So heavy, 1 rep, whatever, or just for 1 minute of reps, or carry something heavy for less than a minute, versus pull-ups, body weight, and get a bunch of those. Talk about why pull-ups are important for your training and how you incorporate strongman as well.
I think pull-ups are the perfect analogy to life, right? It's all about pulling yourself to higher ground. But like I said before, it's not just about me. I can't just be strong enough to pull my own weight up top. So I want to get so strong that I need to be able to physically lift other people up as well. So I've got some videos floating around in the internet space of me putting other people on my back and repping pull-ups. And I recently was like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to write a program for the entire month of October and just focus on doing as much weight as possible, almost like a 1 rep max for a weighted pull-up. And we got to the point where I was doing 205 pounds with a pause at the top, because it's not enough to just get there and come back down. It's like, no, you got to earn that. You got to hold it there. You got to be controlled. The chin has to come all the way over the bar and so on that way. So it's like, for me, it's such a good analogy to life of, hey, everyone wants to just be strong enough to pull their own weight, when in reality, I need to be so strong that if there's someone else falling down, I need to be able to physically lift them up to a higher ground. So trying to strengthen that, metaphorically as much as I can that way. So I'm obsessed with the pull-up for that reason. And I think it's arguably the best upper body move. And if I could, pick one upper body move to just do the rest of my life, that's it. It's like, I think you can hit almost everything you need with the pull-up that way. The strongman training, I was introduced to that from Greg Inocencio and Jeff Kriglick, and it's just so freaking fun. Like, I don't know how else to put it. It's just like, I can see why people get almost like addicted to it. It's like, dude, like, I just deadlifted a car, like, for fun. It's like, dude, why doesn't everyone do this? Like, the energy you get afterwards is it's really hard to explain what it feels like unless you've done it. And it's also very quick to humble you, right? Like, I go into, I don't know, let's take sandbags, for example. Like, I just finished yoke carries in this training session with Greg, and I felt like I was on top of the world because I just did a yoke carry with 525. And, I'm a smaller guy. Body weight fluctuates between 175 and 195. And I was just like, man, that's a lot of weight. That's cool. And then I get humbled by some sandbags that weigh 150 pounds. Like, again, less than my body weight. And it's crazy how some of those little odd objects and the weird ways that you might have to lift them can make you realize that, hey, there's a lot of road ahead, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. So I think there's something empowering or addicting, I guess I want to say, about that concept of doing things that are just really freaking cool, that also challenge you enough to make you realize, like, hey, this is not going to come easy. It's not something that's just second nature to me. I really have to continue to work at it and train with it. And I think, I think there's a lot of talk about functional training and what that looks like, and a lot of debate about that. But I think a lot of the strongman type stuff captures it well, right? You're carrying weird objects that might move around on you. You're lifting things up. You're pressing them overhead, and so on. That way, I think there's a lot of good that comes from strongman style training, and we even incorporated that with a number of our rehabs. That way, we had a yoke in the clinic that I like to use, especially for the ACLs. I was very concerned about the research in relation to bone density taking upwards of 2 years, depending on the athlete, to restore after the bone tunnels are drilled. And to me, I was like, you know what? Yoke would be a great way to put a ton of axial load through that bone and kind of force it to remodel under some stress. So I was a big fan of that. And a lot of athletes had pretty gnarly meniscus tears that were repaired. But as part of the precautions for that, we had to avoid deep knee flexed positions for a long period of time. And I was like, I can understand why we have to do that to protect the repair. Like, we need to protect that. However, I still want to load this athlete. So it's like, hey, I can get them under a yoke, teach them a nice little pitter-patter feet pattern that way, if you will, and we can start loading and moving hundreds and hundreds of pounds earlier while avoiding those positions of concern. So I was a huge fan of the strongman training, and I've seen a lot of benefits from that.
Have you ever watched the Rogue documentaries? They have some really good ones. For me, usually my favorite lift is a back squat, but a close 1A is picking up a natural stone. So what used to be back in the day, hundreds of years, you're a man if and only if you pick up your clan's manhood stone. And so we have Atlas stones in my gym, and I have the Hoosier stones for Indiana for the natural stones. And so it's just, like you said, it's cool picking up things, and it's also quite humbling. Even though at my heaviest and at my strongest, I was really just the middle of a bell curve kind of athlete in terms of results. Like a 600 deadlift is pretty average in that space. And if you follow World's Strongest Man, at one time we had this great lady who was the reigning world's strongest woman, Jessica Fitton. And I'm doing a 550 or a 600 deadlift that's elevated on wagon wheels. And then she comes by and does the same thing. And I'm like, oh, bro, like, the girl's doing my weight, and and she seems not nearly as taxed as I am. So you're right, it is humbling. I also agree. Like, when I bring in brand new athletes, what I find is, like, a lot of times if you get athletes because I'm in Indiana with that farm boy strength that's already built in, they've been carrying things for years. Well, they get them to move a bar pretty easy once you show them the technique, right? They've been carrying things. They have that raw core trunk strength. Their hips and legs can handle the load. So just carrying kettlebells, carrying dumbbells, dragging chains, pushing sleds, or putting it on a yoke. Just a great way. And luckily for me, you don't even need to be that bright. You just pick up things and carry. Like, you could be an idiot, and I can get myself stronger if I can just carry some things. So it's great way for having not a lot of equipment to get a lot of bang for the buck. When you're training though, Dan, and let's say it's a 1 rep max or a 5 rep max, something heavy, or you're trying for a 200-pound pull up, right? What are you listening to? What's blasting on the radio?
Yeah, I mean, like I mentioned before, big fan of the Ryan Jesse music lately. So we've been throwing a lot of that on. It's somewhere between country and metal kind of mix that way. So that one's definitely a favorite. Also a big fan of some of the more metal leaning bands, like Bring Me the Horizon comes to mind. And then on the country side, I've also listened to a lot of country during my workouts, like just straight country. And that varies all over the place. I'll throw it back with some George Strait or Joe Diffie, but I'll also go with some of this more modern new age type stuff, Brantley Gilbert, Jason Aldean. So we jump around, but it's somewhere in that country metal range that way.
What's a bucket list adventure you haven't done yet that you like to do? You have to go someplace and do it.
Yeah, I would love to jump out west to Wyoming and Montana. I go to Colorado every year, get an awesome ski trip in with my family, but would love to hit up Jackson Hole, would love to hit up Big Sky. I hear there's nothing that quite compares to what they've got going on up there. So I'd love to see that for myself and get out there and spend some time exploring and skiing.
My wife and I love hiking. We go to a lot of national parks, and when we have free time, so been to Colorado a number of times, but we haven't been, Yellowstone area glacier yet. So that'd be huge. Do you have a favorite sports movie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what your definition of a sports movie is. First one to come to mind for me is Point Break. I think it's just an incredible depiction of some of the extreme sports that way. I know it's not
The one
necessarily a
that.
sports
The,
movie, there's other action components to it, but all the sports scenes within it are just absolutely incredible.
do you mean the Point Break version back in the day with Keanu Reeves, Patrick
Yeah.
Swayze?
So there's the original one that you mentioned with Keanu Reeves. There's also a newer version. My hot take is I think they're both good. I know usually people try and pick, the older one or the newer one, but I've seen both, and I think they're both good.
Nice.
Um, I think I think it's actually a series that did it right both the first time and second time around.
That's pretty rare, but I like them both. Do you have a favorite sport to watch?
Yeah, lately, if I can get ski racing on the TV, I love to throw ski racing on. If it's not ski racing, this time of year, usually throw field hockey or volleyball. In the springtime, it's usually lacrosse. I know it's not football. I know it's not baseball, and that's what I played growing up. But I think it's a side effect of living in Maryland, where field hockey, lacrosse were like a way of life
Hey,
for so many athletes that just kind of rubbed off on me.
yeah, yep. I never had been around rugby until I was coaching some student athletes, and having watched more and more of that, I'm really enjoying learning the nuances and the traditions of that sport. Do you have a favorite athlete currently or dead or retired, doesn't matter who, that you like to watch?
Yeah, I mean, lately, current skiing space, Michaela Schifrin, retired skiing space, Bodie Miller, unrelated to skiing, but still just an influential figure. When I was in high school, I was a big fan of Greg Plitt, who unfortunately passed away when I was in high school. But the stuff he did in kind of the fitness space that way, and the motivational talks he gave and stuff, like he was next level. So would have been cool to meet him.
What about a book? I know you mentioned Check Engine Light. That
Yep.
sounds like I have it written down here. Any others, or is that your favorite?
Yeah, Check Engine Light, Nick Sedato's book, Sweat More During Peace, Bleed Less During War. I'm also a big fan of Jocko, obviously, and a big fan of Jordan Peterson. JP's 12 Rules for Life. In my
Yeah.
opinion, it's an incredible read. It's probably top 10 in that self-development category of books that I've read, and it's one that I go back to a lot. I know some people find it controversial, but I like it. I like it. I'm here for it.
Beautiful. Superhero. It could be a real life person, or it could be something fictional.
Yeah, I mean, fictional Iron Man or Batman. I don't know if it's a Marvel or DC thing, but they're very similar characters to me. And their stories and backgrounds. Big fan of both.
How about a villain?
I'm gonna go Bane from Batman, and I think Tom Hardy just played that part really well, right? Like, there's something about rolling into the villain role, all like jacked up, swolled up. It's like, if you're gonna be a villain, you want to be the jacked villain, right?
Sure. I hear a lot when we I always ask that question. So far, the most common one is the Joker. Um, Heath Ledger was just outstanding with it, but Bane is often picked, and some people can't decide if Deadpool is either a villain or a hero. So sometimes people pick him. Uh, Favorite lift? I have you down for pull-ups, and that's awesome, man. More than one times body weight pull-up is outstanding. And then you like to, since you like to lift in the morning, right? First thing.
Yep.
I like that too because you get out of the way, no excuses, right? You come home later, you got kids, you got activities, or maybe you're tired, your nervous system's a bit wrecked. There's a lot of reasons not to. And then if I get the workout done before I'm even thinking, should I do it or not? Well, that's already over, you know. You got a quote for us?
Yeah, so I think it's a Latin phrase which I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce because I'd butcher it. But essentially, it goes something like, "If you want peace, prepare for war." And again, that goes back to that analogy we talked about before, right? Like, if you want to experience those moments where things are comfortable and calm and collected, and you don't have to stress when life is otherwise stressful, you have to prepare for it. And the more you prepare, the less likely you are to experience bad things when that time comes.
Uh, it's weird that this is one of the few times in my life where I can provide value. I took 3 years of Latin. So that CV, so it's the SI is pronounced like a C, the V's
Mhm.
are pronounced like W's. So C, V's, Pacum, Parabellum. So I love that. Tell us about ISO Fit. What is
Yeah.
that?
So ISOFIT, I got connected with the CEO, Brad Thorpe, several years ago now. And it's funny because the first phone call I had with Brad, I took it from my now ex-girlfriend's apartment and, paced around her apartment for probably an hour and a half on the phone with Brad. And it's clear him and I worked out, I guess, and her and I didn't. Um, but yeah, it was it's a cool company. They're really doing some great stuff in the isometric training space, which I'm a huge fan of isometrics in my rehabs and my own training. And I think a lot of the exercises we've talked about have heavy isometric components to them, right? Like whether that's loaded carries, yoke, or deadlift, whatever it is that way. It's like there's an element of your body that's not moving. And the stronger it can be when it's not moving, the easier the moving part, experiences that exercise, if you will. So big fan of the stuff they're doing in the isometric space from a equipment standpoint, education standpoint, awareness standpoint. And I think it's good to be involved in something like that. I don't see a whole lot of companies going all in on something like isometrics, but I think it's cool to kind of be involved in that space. And I get to have a very broad role there that involves travel, involves a lot of connection and FaceTime with people. I've been able to meet so many cool people and hopefully have a positive impact on so many cool people as well, whether that's through the product or the education or whatever that way. I think it's been a really fun addition to the growing list of things that I do.
The original, some of the best lifters with the West Side Barbell folks. There's the concentric, then the eccentric, but that same group was still doing isometrics, and it kind of got lost a little bit. So a lot of the greats, the elite FTS, the Matt Wennings, they do that. Cal Dietz, you'll hear him talking about that triphasic training, and one of the three phases is the isometrics. So, it is a component, and when you neglect any component, nutrition, recovery, or even in your lifting, an isometric versus, dynamic movements, you're gonna develop some kind of imbalance or weakness, and it's just another tool in the belt to make sure that you can keep doing things and sustain it. Where can we find you online, Dan?
Yeah, so my MySpace account is
Beautiful.
yeah. So Instagram,
You're too
you
young to even
can
make that joke, bro.
Braun, just my last name underscore PR, just for performance and rehab. You can find that on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all the different things that way. And my email is braunbodytraining@gmail.com. That's probably the quickest way to get a hold of me there.
And the Braun, Braun,
So in the email, it's spelt with a W.
right?
With everything else is spelled with a U. So the original LLC that I formed was Braun Body, Braun with a W. And the advice given to me at the time was, if you ever sell it, you don't want your last name to be the thing on it. You want it to be separate. And
Sure.
maybe that was terrible advice. Maybe it was
That's probably
great
right.
advice. But we've evolved and adapted and rebranded since then. But I keep the original email. So
Beautiful. We'll stick around here for a few minutes once we sign off. For those that keep following along at home, keep sending in questions. Info at athlete-builder.com. Be on the lookout. Our December webinar, the first Tuesday in December. We'll be lining things up to get people squared away for all of 2026. Dan, it was great having you on, man. Love the time. I'll thank you for the gift of your, effort, expertise, your willingness to share. I benefit from it. I know our listeners will also. I have some takeaways. And as you can tell, there's a lot of books behind me, so there's more books I want to get and put them in the queue for me to read. But Dan, I had a great time, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity, Jim. Thank you so much.
for sure.